Ever think about like all the things that could go wrong with with a product?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you think about it from a business perspective.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about today.
Right.
So we're looking at notebook product liability risk control.
Okay.
And this is like all about how companies manage risk when they make and sell things.
Yeah. Because they're putting a product out into the world and anything could go wrong.
Right. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a little bit of a better understanding about how they try to avoid this.
Definitely. And just how much thought goes into it.
Yeah. So the first and most obvious thing is insurance.
Yes. It's kind of the first line of defense.
Right. It's like the safety net.
Exactly.
But in the guide, it says that there's specific terms and requirements. So it's not just like, buying some general insurance.
Right. I mean, think about it. If you are a tech company that's producing smartphones versus a furniture manufacturer.
Right. They're going to have very different needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very different needs. Yeah.
So what kind of things would a company look for when getting insurance for this kind of stuff?
Well, they might need coverage for product recalls, manufacturing defects.
Right.
Even the potential misuse of a product by a consumer.
Right.
So it's really about anticipating what could possibly go wrong and making sure that they're protected.
Got it. And then there's something called additional insured status.
Yes.
So this seems like spreading the risk even further.
Exactly.
How does that work?
So, for example, let's say you're a company and you use parts from a certain supplier.
Right.
If that part ends up malfunctioning and it leads to a product liability claim against you, you can actually add that supplier as an additional insured on your policy.
Okay.
So your insurance would also cover their liability.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it gives you that extra layer of protection.
Yeah, so you're almost like building a web
Exactly.
of safety. Okay, so insurance is one thing, but then we have contracts,
Yeah.
which are the legal nitty-gritty.
Yeah, it gets into the details.
Right, so there's certain clauses that allocate and limit risk. What exactly does that mean?
Well, these clauses, basically, they're all about defining responsibility.
Okay.
So one of the common ones is a hold harmless clause,
Right.
where one party agrees not to hold the other liable for certain events,
Okay.
even if it's due to negligence.
So even if they mess up, the other person is off the hook.
Essentially, yes. It's a way to manage risk by clearly outlining who is responsible for what.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then you have indemnification.
Indemnification.
That's a mouthful, but this is where one party agrees to actually cover the costs if the other party gets sued.
Okay.
So that could include like legal fees, settlements, things like that.
Got it. So like if this happens, I'll foot the bill.
Exactly.
And then the last one.
The last one is limitation of liability. And this one basically caps the maximum amount that one party has to pay in case of a claim.
Okay.
So regardless of what the actual damages are, there's like a set limit.
So even if it's like a huge amount of damage, there's a ceiling.
Exactly. It's like setting a financial ceiling.
Okay. Interesting. And these types of clauses, they're not just for big businesses, right?
No, not at all. I mean, they're everywhere.
Really?
They're sales agreements to construction contracts. I mean, you'll see them in a lot of different types of agreements.
Wow. So there's really like a legal safety net being woven.
Yes, definitely.
So speaking of safety, the guide also mentions certificates of insurance.
Right.
Where do those fit into this?
So basically, think of these as proof of insurance.
Okay.
So let's say you hire a contractor to do some work for you. You want to make sure that they have insurance, right?
Right.
So you can request a certificate of insurance from them, and that verifies that they actually have the coverage.
So it's almost like a background check for their insurance.
Yeah, you can think it that way and make sure that they meet certain standards.
That's really interesting. So it's all about managing risk and making sure that everyone's protected.
Exactly. It's that extra layer of assurance when you're working with somebody else.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing how much goes into, protecting both the consumer and the company.
Yeah. It's definitely a very complex system.
Yeah, this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. It's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fascinating field, and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah. So if you're listening out there and you see a product warning or a really long warranty agreement, just think about all the things that go on behind the scenes to create that.
Exactly.
So that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.